December 14, 1944. Hürtgen Forest, Germany. Private First Class Thomas Michael Keller sits with his back against a shattered oak tree at 0537 hours, writing a letter to his mother by the light of a German flare slowly descending through fog and smoke 200 yards above his position. 23 years old. 8 months in combat. Second letter home in 3 weeks. The first one never received a response. His hands shake slightly as he presses the pencil against the paper, not from fear but from the cold that has settled into his bones after 4 days and nights in the forest without relief. The letter begins with a lie. Dear Mom, I am well and safe. He pauses. Crosses out safe. Writes doing fine. Around him, the forest floor is a moonscape of shell craters and shattered trees. The 28th Infantry Division has been fighting for control of a nameless ridge for 6 days. The ridge has no official designation on military maps. The soldiers call it the meatgrinder. 300 yards of hillside that has cost 847 American casualties in less than a week. Keller's platoon started with 42 men on December 8. This morning, 14 remain. The others are dead, wounded, evacuated for trench foot or missing. The company commander was killed yesterday by tree-burst artillery. The replacement lieutenant arrived 4 hours ago and has not yet learned anyone's name. The letter continues. The forest here reminds me of the woods behind our house where I used to hunt with Dad. Same kind of trees. Different kind of quiet. Another lie. The Hurtgen makes no sound like the Pennsylvania woods. Here, silence means German artillery observers are calculating coordinates. Silence means machine gunners are reloading. Silence means the next attack is forming in the fog. Keller writes about the food, the weather, the letters he has received from his sister. He does not write about the corporal who bled to death in a crater 15 feet from Keller's position while calling for his mother. He does not write about the German prisoners taken yesterday, teenagers who looked like they belonged in a high school cafeteria, not a combat zone. He does not write about the thing that wakes him every time he closes his eyes. A German counterattack came 3 nights ago at 0200 hours. Artillery preparation, infantry assault, close quarters fighting in darkness with bayonets and rifle butts and shovels. The fighting lasted 37 minutes. When it ended, German and American dead lay mixed together in the snow. During that fight, Keller killed a man at a distance of less than 6 feet. Shot him twice with his M1 Garand. The German fell backward against a tree trunk and slid to the ground, leaving a dark smear on the bark. Keller saw the man's face clearly in the muzzle flash. Saw his expression. Saw the moment life became something else. That face visits Keller now in the seconds before sleep, in the moments between artillery barrages, in the pauses when the mind has nothing to occupy it except memory. He does not write about this in the letter. At 0542 hours the flare dies. Darkness returns. Keller folds the letter and slides it into an envelope already addressed to Mrs. Margaret Keller, 427 Elm Street, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He seals the envelope. Tucks it into the breast pocket of his field jacket beneath his wool overcoat. The letter will be mailed when the platoon is relieved, sent to a rest area, given access to military postal services. Relief is scheduled for December 16. 2 days from now. Keller has learned not to trust schedules, but this one might hold. Command wants the 28th Infantry Division pulled back to refit before the next offensive. 2 days. The letter can wait 2 days. Sergeant Raymond Kozlowski appears out of the fog at 0545 hours. Kozlowski is 34 years old, a coal miner from Scranton before the war, and the oldest man still standing in what remains of 3rd Platoon Baker Company. His face is gray with fatigue and cold. Keller. We're moving. Captain wants the platoon positioned 100 yards forward. There's a clearing up there. Good fields of fire. Keller nods. Folds the letter and places it carefully in his pocket. Picks up his rifle. Stands. His legs are numb from sitting too long in the cold. He stamps his feet to restore circulation. They move forward through fog so thick it reduces visibility to 30 feet. The trees here are skeletal, stripped of bark by artillery, branches blown away, trunks scarred by shrapnel. The ground is a chaos of craters and fallen timber. They walk carefully. Mines are everywhere in the Hürtgen. American mines. German mines. Mines from the fighting that happened here in November before the 28th Division arrived. The clearing Kozlowski mentioned is a gap in the forest created by artillery fire. 100 yards across, littered with tree stumps and shell craters. The platoon takes positions along the eastern edge. Keller finds a crater with a view across the clearing and drops into it. The crater is 4 feet deep. Frozen earth. At the bottom lies a German helmet with a bullet hole through the crown. Keller pushes it aside. Checks his rifle. 8 rounds in the clip. 6 more clips in his cartridge belt. Bayonet. 2 grenades. 1 canteen half full of water that tastes like metal. He settles into position and waits. At 0612 hours, German artillery opens fire. The first shells land in the forest 200 yards behind Keller's position. High explosive 150 mm rounds. The explosions are deafening even at that distance. The ground shakes. Trees shatter. More shells follow. The Germans are walking their fire forward, adjusting their aim with each salvo. Keller presses himself flat against the bottom of the crater. Dirt and wood fragments rain down. The shelling continues for 8 minutes. Some rounds land short. Some rounds overshoot. Some rounds find the clearing where 3rd Platoon has taken position. Private James DeMarco, 19 years old, from Brooklyn, New York, dies in his crater when a shell lands 6 feet away. The explosion kills him instantly. When the barrage ends, there is no intact body to recover. The shelling stops at 0620 hours. The silence that follows is absolute. No birds. No wind. Just the ringing in Keller's ears and the sound of someone screaming in the forest behind him. Movement across the clearing. German infantry emerging from the fog. A full company, perhaps 120 men, advancing in 3 extended lines. They move slowly, carefully, rifles ready. Behind them come machine gun teams carrying MG-42s on bipods. Behind them, 2 more companies forming a reserve. This is not a probe. This is an attack designed to overrun American positions and seize the ridge. Sergeant Kozlowski's voice cuts through the morning. Hold fire until they reach the stumps. 40 yards. Nobody shoots before then. Keller watches the Germans advance. Their uniforms are field gray, almost invisible against the fog and snow. They move like professionals, maintaining intervals, covering each other, using what little cover the blasted clearing provides. He thinks about the letter in his pocket. Thinks about his mother opening it, reading about the forest that reminds him of Pennsylvania, reading about food and weather and lies. The Germans reach the line of shattered stumps at 0624 hours. Kozlowski fires first. The rest of the platoon opens up together. M1 Garand's. Automatic fire. Grenades. The Germans go to ground. Return fire. Their bullets crack through the air above Keller's crater. He fires 8 rounds in measured succession. Reload. Fire 8 more. The rifle buckets against his shoulder with each shot. Across the clearing, Germans are falling. Others are crawling toward cover. The machine gun teams are setting up their weapons, but American fire is too heavy. One machine gunner is hit before he can fire a burst. Another team retreats 20 yards and tries again. The German assault falters. The first wave falls back to positions halfway across the clearing. German officers are shouting orders. The second wave moves forward to reinforce. More targets. Keller fires until his shoulder aches and his rifle barrel is hot enough to burn skin. At 0631 hours, German mortars begin dropping rounds into the American positions. 81mm mortars. The shells land with flat cracks. Shrapnel hums through the air. Keller hears someone screaming again. Cannot tell who. Cannot leave his crater to check. The German infantry launches another assault at 0635 hours. This time they come faster, running across the clearing in short rushes, firing from the hip, closing the distance despite casualties. They reach within 25 yards of American positions before the defense holds them. Then 20 yards. Then 15. Private Luis Herrera, 22 years old, from San Antonio, Texas, stands up in his crater with a Thompson submachine gun and empties the 30-round magazine into the nearest group of Germans at point-blank range. The Germans go down. Herrera drops back into his crater. Reloads. Does it again. The attack breaks. The Germans fall back to the center of the clearing. Regroup. Leave their dead and wounded behind. 7 minutes of silence. Then the artillery starts again. This time the shells land directly on American positions. Tree bursts. Airburst shells that detonate above the ground and spray shrapnel downward into foxholes and craters. Keller presses himself against the frozen earth and prays to a god he is no longer sure exists. The barrage lasts 4 minutes. When it ends, Keller's ears are bleeding. He cannot hear anything except a high-pitched whine. He looks up. Sees Germans advancing again. Closer now. They overran some positions during the barrage. American soldiers are fighting hand-to-hand with bayonets and entrenching tools. Keller fires his last clip. Reloads. Fires again. The rifle runs dry. He reaches for another clip and finds none remaining. His cartridge belt is empty. He looks around the crater for ammunition. Finds nothing. He draws his bayonet from its scabbard. Fixes it to the end of his rifle. Waits. The Germans reach his crater at 0647 hours. A young soldier appears at the rim, maybe 18 years old, pointing a Kar 98K rifle downward. Their eyes meet. Neither fires. For one impossible second they simply look at each other. 2 men. 2 rifles. One about to kill the other or die trying. The German hesitates. Keller does not. He thrusts the bayonet upward through the German's stomach. Feels the blade punch through wool and flesh and organs. The German's face contorts. His rifle drops. He falls backward out of sight. Keller pulls the bayonet free. It comes back red. He does not look at it. Looks instead at the clearing where the fighting continues. The Germans are everywhere now. Mixed with American positions. The defense is collapsing. Sergeant Kozlowski appears above the crater. Fall back. Lieutenant says fall back to the rally point. What rally point? The big oak tree. Where we started. Keller climbs out of the crater. Runs. The forest is chaos. Soldiers moving in all directions. German. American. Difficult to distinguish in the fog. He sees Private Herrera 20 yards ahead also running. Sees Herrera stumble and fall when bullets punch through his back. Sees him try to stand. Fail. Lie still. Keller keeps running. Branches whip his face. He trips over a log. Falls. Gets up. Keeps running. He reaches the oak tree at 0653 hours. 11 men from the platoon are there. Kozlowski is organizing a perimeter. The lieutenant is on the radio requesting artillery support on the clearing. The reply is negative. American units still occupy positions in the impact zone. Artillery cannot fire without hitting friendlies. The Germans come through the fog at 0658 hours. A squad, maybe 8 men, advancing cautiously through the trees. They spot the Americans at the oak tree. Both groups open fire simultaneously. The range is 40 feet. Men fall on both sides. Keller's rifle runs empty again. He has no ammunition. None at all. He looks around. Sees a dead soldier lying face down 3 feet away. Checks the soldier's cartridge belt. Finds 2 clips. Takes them. The soldier's dog tags say DeMarco James M. Keller loads 1 clip into his rifle. Fires. The Germans fall back into the forest. More gunfire from other directions. The Germans are circling the position, trying to flank it. The platoon is surrounded. At 0702 hours, artillery fire resumes. This time it lands on German positions. American artillery. Someone got approval. The shells scream overhead and detonate in the clearing and the forest beyond. The German attack stops. The survivors withdraw. The platoon waits at the oak tree. Waits for orders. Waits for relief. Waits for the next attack. At 0715 hours, a runner arrives from company headquarters. The message is simple: hold position until dark, then withdraw to designated fallback lines. Relief is not coming. The entire regiment is under attack. No reinforcements available. Keller checks his pockets. The letter is still there. Still safe. Still dry despite the fighting and the running and the fierce sweat that has soaked through his uniform. He does not take it out. Does not read it. Does not think about it beyond confirming its presence. There is no point thinking about letters now. Now is about surviving the next hour. Then the next. Then the one after that. The platoon holds the oak tree position until darkness. German attacks continue throughout the day. Small probing assaults. Mortar fire. Sniper fire. The Americans respond with what ammunition they have remaining. Call in artillery when targets present themselves. Take casualties they cannot replace. By 1800 hours, 7 men remain standing from the original 14 who reached the rally point. Private Thomas Keller is one of them. The letter remains in his pocket, unread, unmailed, forgotten in the immediate urgency of survival. At 1930 hours, under cover of darkness and falling snow, the survivors withdraw from the Hürtgen Forest. They move in single file, following a trail marked by white engineer tape tied to shattered trees. The forest behind them is silent. The Germans do not pursue. They too have had enough of the forest for one day. The platoon reaches a collection point at 2145 hours. Hot coffee. Food. Medical attention for the wounded. Keller sits on an ammunition crate and drinks coffee that tastes like it was made with water from a shell crater. Does not care. It is hot. That is enough. A clerk from battalion headquarters circulates through the collection point with a roster, checking names, confirming casualties, updating personnel records. When he reaches Keller, he asks, "Any mail you want to send?" Keller remembers the letter. Reaches into his pocket. The envelope is creased but intact. He hands it over. The clerk drops it into a canvas mail bag without looking at it. The bag contains perhaps 40 other letters from soldiers in the battalion. Letters home. Letters to wives. Letters to girlfriends who might not wait. Letters full of lies and truths and the things people write when they don't know if they will survive to write again. Letter goes out in the morning, the clerk says. Should reach the States in 2 weeks if we don't get overrun. Keller nods. Drinks more coffee. The letter sits in the mail bag for 36 hours while the battalion prepares for transport to a rest area in Belgium. During those 36 hours, intelligence reports begin arriving at higher headquarters detailing unusual German activity in the Ardennes sector. Large-scale troop movements. Armor concentrations. Fuel depots being established near the Belgian border. The reports are dismissed as routine defensive preparations. Allied intelligence believes the German army is defeated, incapable of mounting a major offensive. The war will end by Christmas. Everyone says so. On December 16, 1944, at 0530 hours, German artillery opens fire along an 80-mile front in the Ardennes forest. 25 divisions. 200,000 men. 1,000 tanks. The largest German offensive in the West since 1940. The mail bag containing Keller's letter is loaded onto a truck at 0615 hours, scheduled for transport to a postal sorting center in Liège, Belgium. The truck never reaches Liège. At 0847 hours, it is struck by German artillery fire on a road 12 kilometers from the Belgian-German border. The truck burns. The driver dies. Everything in the cargo bed is destroyed, including one canvas mail bag containing 40 letters. Keller learns none of this. He is fighting again by December 17, thrown into the defense of St. Vith with what remains of his division. The German offensive has shattered American defensive lines. Units are scattered. Communications are disrupted. The situation is chaos. For 3 days, American forces at St. Vith hold against German attacks. Keller's platoon is part of that defense. They fight from cellars and rubble piles and street corners. They run out of ammunition. Use German weapons taken from casualties. Run out of those too. Fall back. Regroup. Fight again. On December 21st, St. Vith falls. The defenders withdraw under fire. Keller survives. Many do not. He is separated from his unit during the withdrawal, finds himself with stragglers from 3 different regiments, all retreating west toward American lines. They walk for 2 days. Sleep in barns. Eat food stolen from abandoned farms. Avoid German patrols. Reach American positions near Bastogne on December 23rd. At Bastogne, Keller is reorganized into a composite unit formed from stragglers and survivors. New faces. New names. New sergeants who don't know him and whom he doesn't know. They are given ammunition and rations and assigned to defensive positions around the perimeter. The siege of Bastogne has begun. German forces surround the town. American forces inside number approximately 18,000 men, including the 101st Airborne Division, artillery units, tank destroyers, and scattered infantry from a dozen different regiments. They have ammunition for 3 days of fighting. Food for 5 days. No possibility of resupply. The Germans demand surrender. The American commander responds with one word: nuts. Keller fights at Bastogne for 6 days. Fights through fog and snow and temperatures that drop below 0 Fahrenheit. Fights through German artillery barrages that last hours. Fights through infantry assaults by SS Panzer divisions that reach within 400 yards of the town center before being thrown back. He does not think about the letter. Does not think about his mother. Does not think about anything except the next target, the next shot, the next minute of survival. On December 26th, the 4th Armored Division breaks through German encirclement and reaches Bastogne. The siege is lifted. Casualties are evacuated. Supplies pour in. The defenders have held. Keller is evacuated on December 28th, not because he is wounded but because he can no longer stand without assistance. Trench foot. His feet are black and swollen. The battalion surgeon takes one look and orders immediate evacuation to a field hospital. The field hospital is a cluster of tents 20 miles behind the front lines. Keller is stripped, examined, treated for trench foot, frostbite, malnutrition, and exhaustion. His feet are too damaged for surgery. The doctor says he may lose 3 toes. Says he is lucky it is not worse. Keller sleeps for 16 hours. Wakes. Sleeps another 12. When he finally regains awareness of time and place, it is January 3, 1945. He has been in the hospital for 6 days. A Red Cross worker visits his cot. Asks if he wants to write a letter home. Keller tries to remember the last letter he wrote. The memory comes back slowly. The forest. The clearing. The oak tree. He wrote a letter to his mother on December 14th. 3 weeks ago. She should have received it by now. He dictates a second letter to the Red Cross worker, who writes his words on paper with a pen. Dear Mom, I am safe and recovering in a hospital. Do not worry. I will write again soon. The letter is sent through proper channels. It reaches Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, on January 17, 1945. Mrs. Margaret Keller receives it on January 19th. She opens it with hands that shake because this is the first communication she has received from her son in over a month. The last letter she received was dated November 28th. That letter talked about food and weather and reassuring lies. She reads the new letter. Reads that her son is in a hospital. Recovering. Safe. She allows herself to believe it because the alternative is unbearable. She does not know that the first letter, the one written in the Hürtgen Forest on December 14th, never arrived. Does not know it burned in a truck on a Belgian road. Does not know that her son carried that letter through battles and retreats and sieges, believing it would eventually reach home. The letter that never reached home remains unspoken between them. In later years, Keller will mention it to his mother only once, in 1952, during a conversation about the war. He will tell her about writing it by the light of a German flare, about putting it in a mail bag, about believing it would arrive. She will ask what he wrote. He will not remember. The contents are gone from his memory, lost in the chaos that followed, replaced by images and sounds and sensations that no letter could ever convey. Thomas Keller returns home to Pennsylvania in June 1945, 3 weeks after Germany surrenders. He is 24 years old. He weighs 137 pounds, 41 pounds less than when he entered combat. He walks with a limp from the trench foot damage. 3 toes on his left foot are missing. His mother meets him at the train station in Harrisburg. They embrace. She cries. He does not. Cannot. Something inside him that used to produce tears has stopped working. He notices this absence with the same detachment he notices the missing toes. A thing that was there is now gone. They drive home in his father's Ford. His father is dead, died of heart failure in January 1944, before Thomas shipped overseas. Thomas knew this. Was informed by Red Cross telegram. Was given emergency leave but chose not to take it because his division was preparing for the invasion and he did not want to leave his platoon. That choice now seems like a mistake. Now seems like many things could have been different. Cannot be undone. At home, his mother has prepared his old room. The bed he slept in as a teenager. The desk where he did homework. The window overlooking the backyard where oak trees grow, untouched by artillery, unscarred by war. He looks at those trees and sees the Hürtgen Forest. Sees the clearing. Sees the faces of men who died there. He unpacks his duffel bag. Uniforms. Boots. A few personal items. No souvenirs. No captured enemy equipment. No medals beyond the basic ribbons every combat veteran receives. He was never recommended for decorations. Never did anything noteworthy. Just survived. His mother asks careful questions. Where did he serve? What did he see? Was it dangerous? He answers with versions of truth that contain no truth. France. Germany. Belgium. Yes, it was dangerous sometimes. But I was careful. Had good friends. We looked out for each other. All lies. Different from the lies in the letter but lies nonetheless. The truth is unavailable for sharing because it lives in a place beyond words. Exists in sense memory. The smell of cordite and frozen earth. The sound of artillery. The feeling of bayonet punching through flesh. These things have no equivalent in civilian experience. Cannot be translated. He finds work at a machine shop in Harrisburg. Operates a lathe. Makes parts for farm equipment. The work is mindless. He prefers it that way. Thinking leads to remembering. Remembering leads to the forest. He drinks. Not constantly. Not enough to lose the job. But regularly enough that his mother notices. She says nothing. What can she say? Her son went to war a boy and came back something else. This something else drinks to sleep. Wakes screaming twice a week. Sits in the backyard at 0537 hours watching the sun rise because sleep is impossible after waking. In 1947 he meets a woman named Dorothy. She works at the diner across from the machine shop. They talk during his lunch breaks. She has not lost anyone in the war. Has no framework for understanding what he carries. Does not need to. She is simply present without demanding explanation. They marry in 1948. He does not tell her about the war in any detail. Says only that he was infantry in Europe, that he fought in Belgium, that some things happened he would prefer not to discuss. She accepts this. Many veterans are the same. The war is a closed book they do not reopen. They have 3 children. Thomas works at the machine shop for 34 years. Retires in 1979. Lives quietly. Rarely speaks about the war even when asked. When the question comes up at family gatherings or social events, his response is always brief. I was in the infantry. Saw some action. Nothing special. In 1984, a researcher from the 28th Infantry Division Association contacts him. They are compiling a history of the division's role in the Hürtgen Forest and the Battle of the Bulge. Would he be willing to be interviewed? Thomas agrees. The interview takes place in his living room in April 1984. The researcher asks about specific dates. December 14th through December 21st, 1944. What happened? Where? Who was there? Thomas speaks for 2 hours. Describes the clearing. The attacks. The oak tree. Sergeant Kozlowski. Private DeMarco. Private Herrera. The names come back to him intact. He has not spoken these names aloud in 40 years but they are there, preserved perfectly in memory like photographs. The researcher asks if he kept any letters or journals from that time. Thomas says no. Everything was lost. There was one letter he wrote, he thinks. Doesn't remember what he said in it. The letter never arrived anyway. Burned in a truck or lost in the mail or destroyed somewhere between the front lines and home. The researcher notes this. Thanks him for his time. The interview ends. The history is published in 1986. Thomas's account is included among dozens of others. His name appears in several footnotes. On page 247, there is a paragraph describing the defense of an unnamed clearing on December 14, 1944, based on his testimony. The paragraph is factually accurate but contains none of the sensory details, none of the faces, none of the small moments that make history real to those who lived it. Thomas reads the book once. Does not open it again. In 1994, on the 50th anniversary of D-Day, there is renewed public interest in World War II. Television documentaries. Magazine articles. Veterans are interviewed. Thomas is contacted by a local newspaper. Would he be willing to share his story? He declines. Says he has nothing interesting to say. Says there are others who did more heroic things, who deserve recognition, who should be remembered. He is just a man who survived when many did not. Luck, not heroism. The reporter pushes gently. Says even ordinary experiences are important. History is made of ordinary experiences. Thomas repeats that he has nothing to say. The reporter thanks him and leaves. In 2001, Thomas Keller is diagnosed with lung cancer. Metastatic. Advanced. The doctor says 6 months, maybe less. Thomas is 80 years old. He has outlived Sergeant Kozlowski by 32 years. Kozlowski died in 1969 from complications related to shrapnel wounds sustained in Germany. Has outlived most of his platoon. The ones who survived the war often did not survive the peace. He enters hospice care in August 2001. His children visit. His grandchildren visit. Dorothy sits beside his bed reading to him when he is too weak to read himself. He drifts in and out of consciousness. Sometimes wakes speaking words that make no sense. Names. Dates. Coordinates. On September 7, 2001, lucid for the first time in days, he asks Dorothy to bring him paper and a pen. She does. He writes a letter. Takes 20 minutes. His handwriting is shaky but readable. When finished, he seals the letter in an envelope. Addresses it to his eldest daughter. He dies on September 9, 2001. Dorothy finds the letter among his belongings. Opens it. Reads. The letter is not about the war. Not directly. It is about the woods behind their house. About how Pennsylvania oaks grow straight and strong. About how morning fog in those woods looks nothing like fog in the Hürtgen Forest despite superficial similarities. About how he tried to write a letter once, tried to explain where he was and what he saw, tried to make sense of things that had no sense and failed. He writes that the failure did not matter. Some things cannot be written. Can only be carried. He carried them for 57 years. Now someone else can carry them or not. The choice is theirs. The letter ends with a line about the oak tree. Not the tree in the Hurtgen where his platoon made their stand. The tree in the backyard. The one he could see from his bedroom window. He writes that he looked at that tree every morning for 50 years and remembered the other tree. The one that doesn't exist anymore. The one that was destroyed by artillery sometime after December 14, 1944. He writes that memory is like that. One tree standing for another. One moment standing for hundreds. One letter never sent standing for all the words never spoken. Dorothy reads the letter twice. Folds it carefully. Places it in a box with his military discharge papers and his dog tags and the few other remnants of his service. She does not share the letter with anyone. Respects that it was written for private consumption, not public record. The box remains in a closet until Dorothy's own death in 2017. Her children inherit it. Go through the contents. Find the letter. Read it together. Discuss what it means and what to do with it. They decide to donate it to the National World War II Museum in New Orleans, along with Thomas's discharge papers and a photograph of him in uniform taken in 1943. The museum accepts the donation, catalogs it, files it in their archives. The letter sits in climate-controlled storage alongside 15,000 other letters written by World War II veterans. It is available to researchers who request access to the collection. Most researchers never do. The collection is vast. Individual letters are grains of sand on a beach. But sometimes a researcher does request access. Sometimes they read through the letters searching for something specific or simply browsing for voices from the past. Sometimes they find Thomas Keller's letter. When they do, they encounter a voice from December 1944, speaking about fog and trees and the impossibility of explaining war to people who have not experienced it. The voice does not claim heroism. Does not claim significance. Claims only survival and the long wait of memory that followed. That voice is one among millions. The particular letter it wrote on December 14, 1944, by the light of a German flare, never reached its destination. But the voice itself survived. Lived 80 years. Worked. Married. Raised children. Watched grandchildren grow. Carried its burden quietly until the burden could be set down. That is the legacy. Not the letter. Not the battles. Not the individual moments of violence and fear. The legacy is the carrying. The continuation. The decision to live when living seemed impossible. Thomas Michael Keller. Private First Class. 28th Infantry Division. Baker Company. 3rd Platoon. Born March 14, 1921. Died September 9, 2001. The letter he wrote to his mother in the Hürtgen Forest burned in a truck on a Belgian road. The letter he wrote to his daughter 57 years later survives in an archive in New Orleans. One letter lost. One letter saved. Between them, a lifetime of silence about things that could not be spoken but could only be lived. That silence is also part of the record. The words never written. The stories never told. The explanations never given. They are there in the spaces between what was said. In the pauses before answers. In the careful editing of truth into something bearable for civilian consumption. Every veteran of every war carries some version of that silence. Carries letters never sent, words never spoken, moments never shared. The particular details change. The names, the places, the dates. But the fundamental experience remains constant across generations. War creates a gulf between those who were there and those who were not. Language cannot bridge that gulf. Letters cannot. Stories cannot. The gulf simply exists. Must be accepted as part of what war costs. Not just lives. Not just bodies. But the connection between experience and communication. The ability to translate one into the other. Thomas Keller understood this. Wrote about it as much as he could. Said the rest with silence. His silence, like his service, is now part of the historical record. Preserved in archive boxes. Available to anyone who seeks it. Valuable not because it is exceptional but because it is representative. One man. One war. One letter that never reached home. Millions of others could tell similar stories. Most do not. The stories die with them. Return to earth with their bodies. Become memory without documentation. Become history without record. This is acceptable. Not every story needs preservation. Not every experience needs documentation. Some things are meant to be carried privately, released privately, forgotten when the carrier is gone. But some stories do get preserved. By accident. By intention. By the random survival of a letter in an archive. And when preserved, they stand not just for themselves but for all the stories never told. All the letters never sent. All the silences that followed men home from war and stayed with them until death. The letter that never reached home becomes, in this way, a letter that reached everywhere. That speaks not just to one mother in Pennsylvania but to all mothers waiting for word from sons in combat. That speaks not just about one clearing in one forest but about all the places where men fought and died and tried to make sense of things that had no sense. The specific becomes universal. The particular becomes representative. One letter stands for millions. And in the end, that is what history is. Particular voices speaking particular truths about particular moments. But heard collectively they form a chorus. Individual notes in a composition too large for any one person to hear completely. Thomas Keller's voice is one note in that composition. One letter. One silence. One life lived in the shadow of war. His note has sounded. The echo remains.